Makebi Zulu SLAMS Speaker Mutti is disgraceful after Bill 7 dance Zambia Parliament explodes. A moment meant to mark a legislative victory has exploded into a national controversy. After Bill 7 passed, Speaker of the National Assembly Nelly Mutti was seen dancing, an act that has drawn fierce criticism. Now, lawyer Makebi Zulu has gone public, calling the Speaker's conduct immature, disgraceful, and unprofessional. Was this harmless celebration or a breach of parliamentary dignity? And why has this moment struck such a raw nerve in an already divided nation? Tonight, we examine the facts, the reactions, and the implications. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash, and it's been quite an eventful week here in Southern Africa. Before we dive into today's main story, I hope you've all been keeping well. We've been monitoring some truly extraordinary developments across the continent, but nothing quite compares to what unfolded in Lusaka just hours ago. Today, we bring you a story that has sent shockwaves through Zambia's political establishment, a story of defiance, celebration, and what critics are calling a fundamental assault on the rule of law. Picture this, the hallowed chambers of Zambia's National Assembly. December 15, 2025. The air thick with tension as the most controversial piece of legislation in recent memory reaches its climax. Constitution Amendment Bill No. 7, a bill that the nation's highest court had already declared unconstitutional just months earlier, is being voted upon. And then, it happens. As the votes are tallied, 135 members of parliament in favor, none against, something unprecedented occurs. The Speaker of the National Assembly, the Right Honorable Nelly Mutti, rises from her chair. And in her full ceremonial robes, in front of the entire house, in full view of the nation, she dances. But what kind of dance was this? A celebration of democracy? Or as one prominent lawyer would describe it just hours later, a disgraceful display of judicial defiance? Was this a momentary lapse in judgment by one of the most powerful political figures in Zambia? Or was it something far more sinister, a deliberate, choreographed symbol of the executive's triumph over the judiciary? What happens when the third highest-ranking official in a nation celebrates what critics call open lawlessness? What does it mean when Parliament proceeds as though the Constitutional Court, the highest judicial authority in the land, simply doesn't matter? And when a lawyer sworn to uphold the Constitution accuses the Speaker herself of immaturity, disgrace, and being a first in the Commonwealth for showing her partisan bias so openly, what does that reveal about the state of Zambian democracy? Tonight, we examine not just a dance, but what that dance represents. We explore not just a bill, but what happens when political power confronts judicial authority and wins. We investigate not just the words of Makebi Zulu, but whether his warnings about the erosion of constitutionalism are the desperate cries of the opposition, or the prophetic warnings of a democracy in peril. The question that hangs over Zambia tonight is simple, yet terrifying in its implications. If the nation's parliament can openly defy its own constitutional court, if elected representatives can celebrate that defiance, and if the Speaker of the House can dance while the foundations of the rule of law crack beneath her feet, then what exactly is left of Zambia's constitutional order? Factual foundation, background and timeline. The revelation of this constitutional crisis came to light through a series of events that began not yesterday, but many months ago, a saga that has torn at the very fabric of Zambian governance. Let's establish the timeline. In May 2025, the government of President Hakainde Hichilema, through the Ministry of Justice, introduced Constitution Amendment Bill No. 7 to the National Assembly. The bill sought to amend 13 specific clauses of Zambia's constitution, focusing primarily on electoral arrangements, parliamentary composition, and nomination procedures. On paper, it proposed adding 100 new members of parliament and introducing proportional representation. But from the moment of its introduction, Bill 7 faced fierce resistance. Civil society organizations, the Law Association of Zambia, opposition parties, the church, and traditional authorities all raised a fundamental question: where was the public consultation? Where was the people-driven process that the Constitution demands? Even before Bill 7 was formally issued, opposition members of Parliament Munir Zulu and Celestine Mukandala challenged the constitutionality of the entire executive-led constitution-making process. They filed their case before the Constitutional Court in March 2025, arguing that Article 79 of the Constitution requires genuine public participation, not merely parliamentary debate. Then came June 27, 2025. A date that should have ended this controversy. The Constitutional Court of Zambia delivered its judgment in the case of Munir Zulu and Celestine Mukandila versus the Attorney General. The ruling was unequivocal: Bill 7 was unconstitutional. The court held that the government's amendment process violated Article 79, which explicitly requires wide, meaningful public consultation before any constitutional amendments can proceed. The court went further. It declared that constitutional reforms must be people-driven, not initiated solely by the executive or legislature. It stated, in clear legal terms, that Bill 7 was a nullity void, with no legal force whatsoever. Following pressure from civil society and the Constitutional Court's guidance, President Hichilema appeared to comply. On June 26, one day before the ruling, he instructed the Minister of Justice to defer further parliamentary processing of Bill 7. On October 2, 2025, he appointed a 25-member technical committee on constitutional amendments to undertake nationwide consultations. The technical committee conducted its work throughout October and November. It submitted its final report to the President on December 2, 2025. The report contained recommendations based on consultations across Zambia. But here's where the sequence becomes controversial. On December 14, 2025, just 13 days after receiving the technical committee's report, the Minister of Justice, Honorable Malambo Haimbi, moved a motion in Parliament. The motion requested that Bill 7, the same bill the Constitutional Court had nullified, be restored to the parliamentary order paper for second and third reading. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Nelly Mutti, granted the request. She appointed a select committee to scrutinize the bill. And on December 15, 2025, yesterday, Bill 7 was tabled for second reading, debated for hours, and then moved directly to third reading in the same sitting. By late afternoon, the votes were cast. 135 members of Parliament voted in favor. 0 voted against. 0 abstained, or so the official record would claim, though dozens of opposition MPs had boycotted the proceedings entirely, arguing that participation would expose them to contempt of court. And then came the moment that would ignite a firestorm. Speaker Nelly Mutti, in her full ceremonial robes, celebrated the passage with what witnesses described as a dance on the floor of Parliament. Within hours, lawyer and civil rights activist Makebi Zulu issued a scathing statement that would echo across the nation. Direct evidence. Makebi Zulu's statement. Let me read to you directly from Makebi Zulu's statement, issued in the hours following the vote. These are his exact words, and they are worth hearing in full. Fellow citizens, the passing of Bill No. 7, in open defiance of the clear pronouncements of the Constitutional Court, is a grave affront to constitutionalism and the rule of law in Zambia. He continues. When Parliament proceeds as though the highest court in the land does not matter, it sends a chilling message that legal limits on power are optional, not binding. But it's what Zulu says next that cuts to the heart of the matter. Those who swore an oath to defend the Constitution have instead chosen political convenience over principle, power over prudence, and partisan instructions over their duty to the Republic. The dance criticism. And then, Zulu turns his attention specifically to Speaker Mutti's celebration. Where are the men and women of conscience who should have stood up to say no? Where are the representatives prepared to lose their seats rather than lose their integrity? The disgraceful display of a dance by Madam Speaker in celebration of what is open defiance of the judiciary is nothing short of lawlessness, immaturity, and a first in the Commonwealth to show the leaning of a presiding officer. Let that sink in for a moment. A first in the Commonwealth. Makebi Zulu was asserting that in the entire history of Commonwealth parliamentary traditions spanning dozens of nations and centuries of democratic governance, no speaker has ever so openly displayed partisan celebration in defiance of a court ruling. Other voices join in. Zulu was not alone in his condemnation. Former diplomat and opposition figure Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba issued his own statement demanding Speaker Mutti's immediate resignation. We have stated time and time again that the hijack of democratic institutions by President Hakainde Hichilema, such as Parliament, Electoral Commission of Zambia, judiciary and law enforcement agencies, has significantly eroded the independence and autonomy of institutions and threatened democracy itself. This was on full display today when the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nelly Mutti, could not hide her joy and danced in celebrations, on the floor of the House, in full Speaker's robe, as the manipulation of Parliament was completed through the passing of the illegal Bill 7. Kelly's Konda's question. Political observer Kelly's Konda posed the question on many minds. I am trying to wrap my head around the apparent celebratory gestures of the Speaker in the House today when Bill 7 came up for second reading, or was that third reading? Perhaps someone can make me understand the meaning thereof. Was she celebrating? While I am not privy to the reasons, what was that seeming celebratory dance by the Speaker all about? The opposition's position. Earlier, Porokoso Member of Parliament Brian Mundable had explained why Patriotic Front lawmakers would not participate. I wish to state clearly that Patriotic Front members of Parliament will not participate in the deliberations on Constitutional Amendment Bill No. 7. His reasoning was stark. The UPND government have deliberately ignored a court judgment which declared Bill 7 a nullity, and that proceeding with the bill amounts to open defiance of the rule of law. The Law Association's warning. The Law Association of Zambia had issued its own dire warning weeks earlier. LAZ is deeply alarmed by the decision of the government, through the Minister of Justice, to request the Speaker of the National Assembly to reintroduce the Constitution Amendment Bill No. 7 of 2025 for consideration. And equally concerned by the Speaker's decision to accept this request and appoint a select committee to scrutinize the bill, despite a clear constitutional court ruling that the process leading to the presentation of Bill No. 7 was unconstitutional, rendering the bill a nullity until a proper, people-driven process is undertaken. They continued with this stark assessment. While disagreement with judicial decisions may occur, the rule of law demands full compliance with them. Disregarding the Constitutional Court's directives poses grave risks to our constitutional democracy. When leaders tasked with upholding the Constitution ignore it, citizens are left with limited lawful avenues for redress, thereby eroding public trust and inviting instability. And they made this unequivocal declaration. Going against the declaration of the court is a breach of the law, hence an illegality under Article 1(1) of the Constitution of Zambia, which specifically provides that any act or omission which contravenes the Constitution is illegal. Green Party leaders' extreme charge. Perhaps most dramatically, Green Party leader Peterson Kamba went so far as to invoke the concept of treason. The judgment is public law. Resisting its implementation is treasonous. Organizing bodies such as the Technical Committee, civil society groups, or factions of parliamentarians to resist the Concord judgment is treasonous. He pleaded. My appeal to the Attorney General, Solicitor General, State Counsel Malambo, and all other lawyers close to President HH is that, please, sit down with him and advise him to back out of this treasonous act. The government's defense. On the other side, government spokesperson and UPND representative Cornelius Mwikwa had earlier defended Bill 7 as transformative legislation. The proposed Constitution of Zambia Amendment, Bill No. 7 is a transformative and forward-looking piece of legislation that will enhance the participation of women, youth, and other marginalized groups in national decision-making. He dismissed opposition concerns. The bill's passage would be based on its merit. The proposed amendments will succeed because they are progressive and respond to the needs of the Zambian people. President Hichilema's statement. And finally, hours after the vote and the controversy over Speaker Mutti's dance, President Hakainde Hichilema himself issued a statement. Bill 7 has been one of the most topical and consequential issues of our time, one that has tested the strength of our democracy and the unity of our nation. Throughout this process, we all engaged in lobbying and robust debate. We agreed and, at times, disagreed. As is the nature of any democratic process, such engagement must ultimately lead to a resolution. He concluded. The greatest winners in this process are the people of Zambia and our democracy itself. The people have spoken through their duly elected representatives, and as a nation committed to democratic principles, we must respect both the outcome and the collective resolve it represents. As we close today's episode, I want to thank each and every one of you for staying with us through this complex and deeply important story. What's happening in Zambia right now matters not just for Zambians, but for anyone who cares about constitutional democracy in Africa. The events of December 15, 2025, Bill 7's passage and Speaker Mutti's controversial celebration represent a critical moment. Whether you see this as democratic progress or democratic backsliding likely depends on where you sit in Zambia's political landscape. But one thing is undeniable: the controversy is far from over. Contempt proceedings are pending before the Constitutional Court. The government's cross-petition seeking to overturn the June ruling awaits hearing. President Hichilema must still decide whether to assent to Bill 7, knowing it carries legal challenges. And in just 8 months, Zambian voters will have their say in the August 2026 elections. As Makebi Zulu wrote in his statement, citizens must now organize, speak out, and prepare to hold their leaders accountable in August 2026, when the people will have the opportunity to pass their own verdict at the ballot box. Now, I want to hear from you. This is one of those stories where reasonable people can disagree, and I'm genuinely curious about your perspectives. Do you believe Parliament had the right to proceed with Bill 7 after the Constitutional Court ruling? Or do you think this represents an unacceptable defiance of judicial authority? Was Speaker Mutti's dance an innocent celebration, or was it, as Makebi Zulu charges, a disgraceful display of partisan bias? And more broadly, what do you think this saga reveals about the state of democracy in Zambia? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Whether you're watching from Lusaka, Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, or anywhere else in the world, your voice matters in this conversation. Let's build a constructive dialogue about these critical constitutional questions. If you found this deep dive valuable, please hit the like button. It really does help more people discover these important African stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to InspirAfrica Official and click the notification bell so you never miss our coverage of the continent's most compelling political developments. We'll be monitoring this story closely in the days and weeks ahead. As soon as the Constitutional Court rules on the contempt proceedings or the government's cross-petition, we'll bring you comprehensive analysis. And as Zambia moves toward those August 2026 elections, you can count on InspirAfrica to provide balanced, in-depth coverage of one of Southern Africa's most important democratic tests. Thank you again for watching. This is Nakash, and I'll see you in the next edition of InspirAfrica Official. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep the conversations going. Take care, everyone.